Imagine writing a book so important that it becomes part of the Bible, yet history forgets almost everything about you. No birthplace, no family history, no dramatic calling story, no record of your death, no details about your life whatsoever. Just one name, Obadiah. And that's exactly what makes him one of the most fascinating prophets in Scripture. Today, we're diving into the shortest book of the Old Testament, a prophecy so small that many Christians have never read it, and yet so powerful that it contains one of the Bible's clearest warnings against pride and one of its strongest declarations of God's justice. This is the story of the biblical prophet we know almost nothing about. This is the story of Obadiah. If I asked you who Isaiah was, you could probably tell me he was a major prophet. If I asked about Jonah, you'd probably mention the fish. Daniel, the lion's den. But Obadiah? Most people draw a blank. And honestly, that's understandable. The book of Obadiah gives us almost no information about its author. The name Obadiah means servant of Yahweh, and it was actually a fairly common name in ancient Israel. In fact, the Old Testament mentions multiple men named Obadiah. But here's the problem. We don't know which one wrote this book. Many scholars believe the prophet Obadiah is a completely different individual from every other Obadiah mentioned in Scripture. His identity remains a mystery. Some scholars date his prophecy shortly after Jerusalem was destroyed by Babylon in 586 BC. Others place him earlier. The truth is that even the date of the book is debated. Think about that for a moment. We don't know exactly when he lived. We don't know where he came from. We don't know what he looked like. We don't know how he died. Yet somehow his message survived, and that message was aimed at one specific nation, a nation called Edom. To understand Obadiah, we need to understand Edom. The Edomites trace their ancestry back to Esau. Israel traces its ancestry back to Jacob. And if you know the story in Genesis, Jacob and Esau were brothers. Twins, actually. And yes, this is the same Esau that sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. Can't blame him, to be honest. No, I'm just kidding. That means Israel and Edom were essentially brother nations. Yet their relationship was marked by centuries of hostility. Again and again, Edom oppressed Israel. But one event appears to have pushed that hostility to a breaking point. When Jerusalem was attacked and devastated by foreign invaders, Edom didn't come to help. Instead, they stood by and watched. Some biblical passages suggest they may have been participating in the plundering. Imagine seeing your own relatives suffer disaster, and instead of helping, you profit from their downfall. That is the backdrop of Obadiah's prophecy. One word summarizes Edom's problem: pride. Edom occupied a mountainous region filled with natural forestries. Their cities were built among steep cliffs and rocky heights. From a military perspective, they seemed nearly untouchable, and over time, that security produced arrogance. Obadiah records God's accusation: "You who live in the clefts of the rocks, who can bring me down to the ground?" In other words, Edom believed they were invincible. Their geography made them feel secure. Their wealth made them feel secure. Their alliances made them feel secure. And eventually, their pride convinced them that they didn't need God. This is one of the most timeless themes in Scripture. The things that make us feel strongest often become the things that blind us the most. Edom trusted in their position. God warned them that their position would not save them. One of the most dramatic features of Obadiah is the reversal. Everything Edom trusted would fail. Their allies would betray them, their wisdom would disappear, their strength would collapse, their defenses would not protect them. The nation that seemed impossible to defeat will be brought low. This pattern appears throughout the Bible. Human pride rises. God humbles it, not because God hates success, not because God opposes achievement, but because pride convinces people they are self-sufficient. And Scripture consistently teaches that self-sufficiency eventually becomes self-destruction. For Edom, judgment wasn't merely about military defeat. It was about exposing a false sense of security. In verse 15 of the book of Obadiah, the focus begins to widen. Suddenly, the prophecy isn't only about Edom anymore. It's about something much bigger: the day of the Lord. This phrase appears throughout the prophets. It refers to moments when God intervenes decisively in history to judge evil and establish justice. Obadiah declares in verse 15, "The day of the Lord is near upon all nations." Notice that. Not just Edom, all nations. The message expands from a local conflict to a universal principle. No nation is beyond God's authority. No empire is beyond God's judgment. No power is too strong for accountability. The same standard applied to Edom applies to everyone. What people sow, they eventually reap. So, in my study time, I've been going through the book of Ezekiel, and when I started to read the book of Obadiah, it seemed to follow the same overwhelmingly negative themes: judgment, destruction, condemnation. I was about to turn on some Forrest Frank because I just couldn't take anymore. But luckily, the book doesn't end there. The final verses shift towards restoration. God promises that his kingdom will ultimately prevail. The people of God will be restored. Justice will not have the final word. God's reign will. This ending transforms the entire book. Obadiah isn't simply about punishment, it's about hope. The downfall of evil clears the way for the establishment of God's kingdom. The final line is one of the most powerful conclusions in any minor prophet book, major prophet book, Old Testament book. It goes like this: those who have been rescued will go up to Mount Zion and Jerusalem to rule over the mountains of Edom, and the Lord himself will be king. After all the conflict, after all the injustice, after all the pride and violence, the story ends with God's sovereignty. Okay, I get it. In the days where we have the Gospels and the entire New Testament, it's tempting to dismiss Obadiah as a tiny, obscure book about an ancient nation that no longer exists. But its message remains remarkably relevant. Pride still destroys people. Nations still exploit the weak. People still celebrate the downfall of their enemies. Human beings still place their trust in wealth, security, power, and status. And God still calls people to humility. In many ways, Obadiah asks a simple but uncomfortable question: what are you trusting in? Your success, your resources, your influence, your circumstances, or God? Because the lesson of Edom is that anything we trust more than God eventually becomes unstable ground. So, the main question: who was Obadiah? We don't really know. He remains one of the Bible's greatest mysteries. A prophet without a biography, a messenger without a backstory, a name attached to only 21 verses. And yet his message has survived for thousands of years. Maybe that's fitting, because the book of Obadiah isn't ultimately about Obadiah. It's about the God who opposes pride, defends justice, and promises that one day his kingdom will reign over all. And perhaps that's why history forgot the prophet, but remembered the message. If you enjoyed this exploration of one of the Bible's most overlooked books, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which obscure biblical figure you'd like to see covered next. God bless you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thanks for watching. Peace.